Hello, my friends. This is Eric with One Number, and in this week's Tableau video, I want to cover how can you use multi-select sets in Tableau calculations. And so let me start with a little bit of backstory here. The concept of using sets in calculations isn't totally new to me. That's something that I've been doing for years. For example, in the past, I've done things like created a top 10 set that you could use in a calculated field so that you could say something like, hey, what do the sales look like for our top 10 states, and how does that compare to all other states combined? So I'll drop a link to a blog post that talks about how to do that. So specifically, if you want to try out that use case, you can. But something that's a more recent concept for me is the idea of referencing a multi-select end user set in a calculated field. So your end user could adjust the variables that are in a set, and your worksheet and your visuals would update accordingly. So first of all, I need to give a huge shout out to Ray Givler for this. He's a great follow on LinkedIn, talks about all types of different Tableau topics. So he's got a great use case where he looks at having a bunch of different sets where you can select them and compare. But I just want to walk through a very simple scenario where a multi-select set might be really valuable for your end user to have access to. Okay, so in this case, I've already got this built out, and then we'll build this out again for ourselves. This worksheet says what % of quarterly sales came from selected states. So what I'm seeing is that California makes up anywhere from 14% to 25% of sales per quarter over this 4-year period, right? And what's cool about this is that this is a set that could be changed. So if I said, actually, I'd really love to see how does that compare to New York, another large state, then I could swap that, right? And so I could see New York, the upper end of New York might be close at 21%, but the lower end of New York is much lower at 5%. And even better now, I could select multiple states. So if I want to say, okay, maybe our three biggest markets is New York, California, and Florida. So how much do just those 3 states make up? Sometimes just those three states alone have accounted for more than 50% of all the sales. So pretty cool for your user to be able to do this, right? So if you're not maybe thinking about how cool this is yet, let me show you why this is really nice, okay? Let me do a new worksheet. Multi-select set walkthrough. And I'll drop a link to this workbook in the description. So if you want to build this out or check it out for yourself, you can. So let me do this. Let me put my quarter of order date on my column shelf. And I'm just going to hard code a calculated field, which would give us like % of total sales from California, right? So I'll call it state % of total sales. So how this would work is my numerator would be something like an if clause. So I would say like if state equals California, then sales, and need to wrap that entire thing in the sum function, and then divide the California sales by the denominator, which would be all sales. Okay, let me format that as a % so it's all nice. Cool. So if I throw that on the row shelf now, make it a bar, let me show my labels, you'll see the same type of thing that we saw in that very initial view where California is ranging from 14 to 25% of sales, okay? But the bummer about how we just did that is that it's hard-coded. It's just California, right? So I could come in here and I could hard-code a different state, or we could hard-code multiple states, but it's not super dynamic for my end user. And for those of you that are thinking, well, why not use a parameter? Well, with a parameter, they could swap between, one state and another state, but could they pick 3 different states very easily? Not really, right? That would be kind of clunky. There'd have to be 3 parameters. Or you'd have to like guess already at what 3-state combination they want. Not super usable. However, let's create a set based on our state field. So I'm going to go to the state field in my data pane, hit the drop down, and create a set, okay? And so I'll just call this selected states. And let's start with something other than California so we can observe when this changes. So let me think, what's another big state? Maybe, I don't know, I think Washington actually has a lot of sales in this data set. Let's give it a whirl. So I say, okay. And what I'm gonna go do is I'm gonna update my state % of total sales calculation, that one I was just working on. And so here's how you reference a set. Instead of saying if state equals California, I'm going to get rid of that logical expression, and I'm just going to say if selected states, then sales. So sets are a little bit funky. This took me a little bit to get used to. You don't say if state equals selected states. This is sort of like almost an implicit in statement for those that are kind of in the SQL world. So you're just basically saying if a state is in the selected state set, then do this thing. So it's only going to give me sales for Washington right now because Washington is the only one in the selected states. Okay, so I'll say okay, and immediately, boom, my chart changes. Washington comprises anywhere of 1% of total sales on up to 16%. So next, I want to show this set for my user, okay? And please note this order of operations is very important. I can't really show the set until it's being, used in the worksheet somewhere. Like right now, it's being referenced indirectly in the worksheet via this calculation. So now, because of that, what I could do is I could go to my selected states set, and then I'm just going to hit the drop down on selected states in the data pane and say show set. Not show filter, just show set. So now my user has what looks like a filter, but it's not a filter technically, right? In the sense that it's not filtering the worksheet, right? It's not present in my filters card. But what it allows my user to do is to make selections. And then effectively what it's doing is it's updating the numerator of this calculation without affecting the denominator. So that percentage changes based on what state has been selected, okay? So a couple more thoughts coming up on this. Just kind of quick note here. If you check out this info button in the top corner of the sheet, you'll see some Tableau classes we have coming up. Specifically, we have one we're really excited about called Mastering Tableau Calculations 2. It covers things like sets and parameters and level of detail expressions and all things advanced calculations. So if that sounds like you, please do check that out. We would love to have you join us for that soon. Okay, so this set, what I'll probably do is I'm gonna go ahead and set this to be something like a multiple values drop down, maybe customize and show an apply button. And now my user could just, select whatever it is they need to, right? So if they wanna go back to just California, they can. Or if they wanted to do California and District of Columbia, they can, right? So what's cool about this, and this is maybe a little bit beyond where we'll go right now, is that in theory, you could actually have like 2 different sets and then have, this is the selected states for the left side, this selected states for the right side of the dashboard or the worksheet, and have those values updating and showing you how those individual values add up to an overall percent of total. So there's a lot of really cool, flexible ways to be able to utilize sets in the calculation. So I hope this kind of helps broaden your horizon. Like I said, this is only a concept that I've really begun tackling in the last, I would say, year. Just the idea of using a end user selectable set in a calculated field. And I've been using Tableau for almost a decade. So if this is news to you, don't feel bad. It's, kind of newerish for me too. And if this is just old news for you, then awesome. You're already ahead of the curve. So, cool. I hope this was kind of a helpful concept. We look forward to bringing you new content like this every week. So if you're not already, we encourage you to follow along. So thank you so much, and we'll catch you on another video here next week on the One Number channel. Thanks.